But the nice thing was, and that was always a big matter too, that especially the world we live in now, where you have cell phones, where you have internet, you have everything. It's just so special that you can escape once in a while and just be offline for a few months.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. Today's guest is somebody that I actually found on the Swiss Television. And because even though I live in Cyprus, I love watching Swiss television once in a while. It sort of connects me to home. And there was this stuff that I started watching about people traveling abroad. And then I found Markus Blum and his family. And first I thought, when I was watching this, what they did in Canada, I thought these people are crazy. But then I watched more and more and more and read more and more about them and got more and more fascinated. And I think that they are just about my kind of people. So Markus Blum, welcome to my podcast.
Hello, Elizabeth. Thanks a lot for having me.
I want to know everything about you and your family and your wife, Sabrina, because I am absolutely fascinated. You were obviously born with the travel gene. It didn't just start with your wife and with your family. You were traveling before, weren't you? When was the first time you went on a plane?
Well, the first time actually I went on a plane, that was after my apprenticeship I did in Lucerne as a draftsman. And I hopped on a plane to New Zealand and went off for half a year, New Zealand and Australia. And from there on, I just knew I really got hooked up to it. And of course, I think I got, with growing up with my family at home, we never went overseas. We went, I think the first time I even saw the ocean, that was in Italy. Maybe I was already 15 or like a teenager. It never bothered me. Like, of course, we had other students from the class come and the teacher would ask, well, where have you been on your holidays? And some of them may be told from being in New York or places like that, but it didn't bother me. Like, I never had the feeling that my parents should also take me to, faraway places. We just spend a lot of time in nature. And I think that made it even more special that the first time hopping on an airplane, like realizing that, I financed everything, I paid it out of my own pocket and just take off.
Yeah, and I think things were so different then, weren't they? I mean, if there weren't any low-cost carriers at the time, flights were quite expensive, but they were different. And deciding to just go to New Zealand, that must have been quite a big decision. That was quite a trip. And you were telling me before we started recording that you actually worked as a skiing instructor in New Zealand.
That's right. I did that for many years. And actually, what happened, that brought me to New Zealand as well. But the first time I didn't go to New Zealand for instructing. I did after my apprenticeship. I knew draftsman is not my kind of job. I'm a very creative person, but sitting on a desk all day was sort of, I was looking out the window and thinking about faraway places. But I didn't really know, what else could I do? So I thought I'll take time off and move out of my parents' place and go to Davos in the Swiss mountains, because I was hooked up to, I was involved with skiing. And then I decided, well, I could do a season in Davos, become a certified ski instructor. And at that time, I was roommate or flatting together with a guy from New Zealand. And so that's how it all started. Like, we became friends, and I did not speak any English then, really, because I never learned it at school as well. And he said, well, come to New Zealand and you can stay with me for a little while. And then I just went off. What I did first was I was going to a language school, but then I was sort of disappointed too. I thought, well, now I traveled half around the world, and the first time I'm overseas, and now I'm ending up in a classroom again. So that was not quite my taste. But then, like, after 3 weeks, I took off. I started hitchhiking and backpacking, and so
amazing. This This is so funny because I had one of my first jobs was cleaning hotel rooms in Sörenberg, where I come from in the end. And there was this guy from New Zealand. He just did all the hoovering. We were cleaning beds and we were changing bed sheets and cleaning bathrooms. And he just, after us, he came to hoover. And we only had one key. My first proper words in English that I knew was the key, please. With a New Zealand accent. so then Markus, you met your wife in Australia, or you came across your wife for the first time in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. That was quite a special story in my life too. Like that was a few years later. Yeah, after that first trip to New Zealand, like it all started that I was going, like I did the winter season in Davos, and then in summertime when they have winter in New Zealand, I go to New Zealand and do ski instructing. And then later on, I was doing ski racing in New Zealand too. So I think it was in 2004, after I finished my season in New Zealand, because before I would come back to Davos, I always, did some traveling in between seasons. So my brother joined me. We met in Australia and we had a fantastic time, maybe traveled for almost 2 months. And then just a day or 2 days before we decided had to fly back to Switzerland, we ended up in Cairns. So we walked through the street in the evening and we see this Swiss bacon coffee shop. And usually I'm not the kind of guy that, if I'm overseas, I don't need to find a Swiss bakery or something. I just, I like local stuff. So, but anyway, it was shut, that cafe, and we said, well, next morning we come here and we have coffee, and we were sitting on a table, and of course, like my brother and me, we were speaking Swiss German, and this beautiful young lady comes up. She was working there. That was Sabrina. Hearing that we speak Swiss German. So she comes up and, of course, like takes the order, but also says, well, where are you guys? And she said, no way. Like I was living in Davos, basically growing up in Davos for many, many years, but we've never met in Davos, she's 6 years younger than me. Of course, that was back then. She would not be maybe in bars when I was in bars. So, and she was friends with people I knew and I was friends with. Anyway, she served us coffee and that was it basically. But after we left the cafe, I said to my brother, I said, wow, this girl, that's now, I fell in love. I just said, she's beautiful. She's really nice. That's the type of girl I could imagine, like I was just hooked up. And I think I was just all day long, I was talking to my brother about her. And funny enough, in the afternoon, she had maybe lunch break or whatever, and we crossed again on the street. And she said, well, you guys like to come for a drink this evening? And we said, oh, yeah, we might come. So she told us where she's going to be. But also said, that was even at the cafe, I forgot to tell you, she said, well, she's now living, of course, in Australia because she was in her younger years, she was living in Australia with her parents. So it was easy for her. She had the citizenship. But she moved to Australia and at that time was living together with her boyfriend. And she told me, of course, she told us that. So I said to my brother, well, she's taken anyway. So, and my brother and me had a drink in the evening at the hostel. And then my brother says, well, do you want to go to that place she's now at the bar and have a drink with her? And I said, I was sort of too tired or just could not, I said, well, let's leave it. She's got a boyfriend anyway, and we're going home tomorrow. So no point. We stayed where we were and went home to Switzerland. And 2 years later, funny enough, she was back in Davos, no boyfriend, and it all happened.
That's how things
Now we
happen.
got a family.
And there is no coincidence in life. There is, everything happens for a reason. And it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, how big or small can the world be that you met the same girl in Australia and then back in Davos and she was available? Sometimes it doesn't work. You could have been hooked up with somebody at the time.
That's
so
right.
You were...
And she only planned to come to Switzerland because her mum had her 50th birthday then. So she wanted to be at that party and just decided she would only come for a winter season and then go back to Australia. Mm-hmm. And she went back to Australia after the season, but only to get her stuff and brought it back. But she also told me, and I think that's when I really started liking her, she said, well, something you got to know, like if you want to stay together with me, I'm not going to spend all my life in one place. Like I want to keep traveling.
Yeah, I think you were like two souls who found each other on the same wavelength. So then what happened? Then you went to Canada.
Well, that's right.
What made you go to Canada?
Well, it was basically like, it didn't take long. I think we were only maybe 1.5 years together even, or less almost. She said, we talked about having kids. And because she traveled lots and I traveled lots and we, totally in love, thinking we're the right, the right couple for that. So we decided to have a family. And so when Sabrina got pregnant, we just, everyone around us, basically, our families and friends and everyone would come up and say, well, finally Sabrina is pregnant, so that will stop you guys from traveling because now you will have a family, you settle down. And for a while we thought, yeah, that's probably what we're going to do. And not being honest with ourselves maybe, but just... And so we decided when Sabrina was 4 months pregnant, we decided, well, now we're going to do our last big trip maybe for a while. And so we went to Canada for a few months and bought a canoe and traveled down the Yukon River. But it only fired us up, like thinking, well, this is really what we want to keep doing. But
it made you want more.
Want more and thinking about, well, why should we not be able to do that with a kid too? Because other like the Mongolians or the nomads, or they live out in the bush and pack their kids on a horse or on a camel and move to different places and not being complicated, just because you have a family. So, but anyway, we got after that trip, we got home. Oh, Elizabeth, now it's just on the door. I think I just have to hand out something. Is that
no problem? No problem.
Sorry about that.
So then you came back to Switzerland from Canada after this trip when Sabrina was pregnant, and you decided to go back to Canada.
Yeah, it took a little while again from there. Of course, our little Amira was born in October. And we also got married, actually. And then for a while, of course, we were very happy. I mean, we still are happy parents. So, but I think we took it sort of quite relaxed. Like we enjoyed family life. And I think it already showed that Sabrina took it very relaxed, like being pregnant on a canoe. For a few months, we had no communication, but I think she had that in her mind. I'm just pregnant, so most normal thing in life. Then when Amira was 7 months old, we wanted to move again, we wanted to do something. So, of course, we asked ourselves, well, what kind of traveling would be possible now with a little girl? So what we did, we packed our bags, took the bicycles, and we cycled from Switzerland to Croatia for a few weeks. And there it really showed us basically that traveling with kids was it was not a problem, like, of course she was sleeping a lot too, and she was just in a trailer. And, but we thought, well, we were sleeping in a tent. We were just simple. So we thought, well, that's all no problem. And we got back home. But what we missed, I have to say, on that trip, like Croatia, of course, after Canada, being in the wild was sort of very crowded. And, we had to basically camp on campgrounds and being jammed in between big motorhomes and not having a fire in the evening. So basically our thoughts went, it was still out in Canada. And so we got back home and suddenly I got this, I was reading this book about Nicolas Vanier, das Schneekind, the snow child. I think there's no, yeah. And it tells the story about this Frenchman, a very famous adventurer, that in 1994 he went with his wife and his little daughter. He went into, he traveled in Canada for 1 year, but on horseback, and built a little cabin on a lake and, just spent the whole year out in the bush. So after reading that story, we were just very fascinated, and it showed us too that someone else was basically doing special things with a child as well. So we thought, let's do this too, and the idea just suddenly grew that it would be our plan to go and find that cabin, which was then 16 years later. So we went to Canada in the year 2010 when Amira was 1.5 years old, and had this idea, we'll buy horses, saddle them up, pack them with all the gear and food we need for a few months, and then find Nicolas Vanier's cabin. And the funny thing was, or the interesting thing about it was that in the book, he doesn't describe where it exactly is, but we sort of did research and found out, but never knew, like when we were on the trip, we never knew when we get to this lake, will that cabin still be there, or has it collapsed in between or burnt down or whatever. And so it took us half a year for the whole trip, and to learn being on the way with horses, learn all about horses. And of course we had in the mind, we have a little girl, and we really have to be careful and think what we're doing and be prepared. But also I think what was good that we actually did find that cabin and we're able to do that whole trip was just being, I think, young. I wouldn't call it stupid or just thought, why not?
First of all, one thing that I wanted to say, what you were mentioning before about traveling around with a child, and originally we were nomads. We lived in caves, and humans traveled around, and humans lived in tribes. It's society that dictates us that we have to be in a house by ourselves. And that's why so many people are lonely and don't know how to be alone. Yeah. And so I think that's wonderful what you did. But the other thing that I wanted to say, did you ever have a situation when you felt afraid? Like, was Amira ever sick and you didn't know what to do? Or did anything ever happen during that time that you felt, oh no, maybe that was not such a good idea?
Yeah, no, definitely. Amira, to answer that question, she was never sick. We weren't sick either. But it was like at the very start, like we went to Canada and we knew sort of our route where we have to go to find that cabin, but we didn't have organized horses before, and we hardly had any experience with horses at all. So we went to Canada, went to a place that was in Vanderhoof in British Columbia, where we knew there's big farms, like horse farms, and we thought, well, we go and find a person or a farmer that will basically sell us horses. So we met this guy, John, and he was retired, but he had more than 100 horses. And we thought, well, when we heard he has so many horses, we thought, well, this will be easy. Like, he'll sell us a few. And but it turned out that most of his horses were just wild. So he basically had 2 good horses for riding. And after a while, like, he trained us, and he said, well, before you take off, you should take my 2 horses, do an overnight trip, just a 2-day, and then come back. And that way you will find out what will face you, and you can still make the decision whether you're up for it or not. And so he drove us out into the forest and showed us a path. And he said, well, just follow this path for a few kilometers and hours, and then you get to a little lake, you put up your tent, and you return the next morning. We weren't riding those horses. We packed them, with gear as pack animals. And Sabrina had Amir on her back with those long, like carriers type. She walked ahead, and I had those 2 horses behind me. They were tied together, and I held them on a leash, and I was just following her. But then as soon as the branches hit those boxes, it made noise, and the horses got scared, and I didn't want to let them go. So they always pulled me off into the bushes on the side, and lots of mosquitoes that time too. It was in May, I think. And it was horrible. Like when there was a swamp coming up, or a creek or a river, like the horses, I could not stop them. I was basically following the horses, and I just walked through the swamp and through hip deep water, and it was absolute chaos. We never reached that little lake John told us about. We found the camp spot a little bit earlier, put up our tent, and we were sitting like the only, like Sabrina, of course, was sort of on the ground, like, disappointed or just thinking, well, that's the end. And I was, and Amira was totally happy. She was just happy. She slept very well that evening in the tent. But Sabrina and me, we were sitting in the tent that evening, just thinking, that's it. I sort of still had hope, but I could not convince her to, say, oh, yeah, no, we'll be fine, So we slept very bad, also knowing, well, our dream is, it's gone. Now we have planned this for a long time, already dreaming how we will be out in those valleys and, sitting on the fire, finding this cabin. And also slept well because we knew the next morning we have to go back. So it'll be total chaos again. And so we woke up in the morning, we saddled the horses because we wanted to get it done and over as fast as possible. And suddenly, as we packed the horses, they started sweating and shivering. And I thought, oh, no, it can't be. Now, we only put them on a saddle and they already act up like this. So, but what happened, and the horses saw it before or smelled it before we did, it was a bear turning up not far away from us. So just because we could deal with that, before we could deal with that problem too, like John turned up. He came up to us to check. And I said, John, I'm so glad to see you. Told him all about the problem we had. And he said, well, if that's the case, don't go back the same way. Not far from here, there is a road, like a forestry road that leads out. So take that road and there's no branches and the horses probably will be fine. On the way back, everything calmed down because the terrain, we had a road to walk on. So, and suddenly like this little, like hope came back, suddenly thinking, well, it's all relaxed and also finding out that John said, well, maybe the horses are not as good as I thought. And if we find better horses, then maybe you can still try. So I think that was the good thing. If that evening, if we would actually have reached, if that lake or that camp would have been the end, we would have given up, I think. But the way back saved us because it gave us time to think about it and look at it from a different angle. And funny enough, like you said before, there's no, no
coincidence. There's no coincidence
in life, right?
Yeah.
suddenly these people all around in the area, they heard that a young family is looking for horses. So suddenly we got contacted and got given good horses for a few months. And
amazing. So you did do what you wanted to do. And I read that you were isolated for quite a long time. You were just the three of you, weren't you? And you had to buy food for this time. And you were living off, I don't know, birds that you...
Yeah, we did, especially in winter too. But in summer, we did a lot of fishing.
Yeah.
And birds. Yeah, we shot birds. How do you say, like the snow, like the forest chicken, basically.
Yeah.
And of course, we had a license for that. It ended up being a wonderful trip. Like it was always a lot of difficult decisions we had to make, and we ended up in a forest that basically swallowed us for a whole week, and sometimes not moving more than 2 km a day after being on a horse for 7 hours. So we had to cut down branches and little trees and just to make it possible to get through. And we took a lot of food along. We had 5 horses, 2 for riding and 3 just fully packed with lots and lots of
supplies.
Yeah.
Did you always know where you were?
Yes, we did. We did.
Helps, doesn't it?
And then, but what you said, we spent the whole winter then in that cabin too. But maybe I go too far ahead now.
No. But then you decided this was always time limited. Had you always given yourself a certain amount of time that you would want to stay there? Or did you just decide at some point it's enough now and we're going back? How did that happen?
No, we actually, like when we left, we knew we had half a year.
Okay.
I was still on contract. I was working in a sport shop here in Davos. And suddenly my boss came up to me and he said, "Oh, Markus, you have like 5 months overtime or, like, please take it."
Well,
so that was it. That sort of explained to you how we could afford it all, Yeah.
So you put those 5 months to good use. I mean, that was an amazing experience.
Yeah. No, it was totally. And of course, it made us hooked up even more and showing us that we are basically not limited being a family. We can still do, maybe even what other people wouldn't even do with a child, or without a child.
But you see, I always say that most people live in the comfort zone. They stay in the comfort zone, but the comfort zone is the place where all the dreams die. And you definitely left the comfort zone and you made your dreams come true.
Yeah, absolutely. And it basically showed us too that I think if you have a dream that you want to fulfill, you gotta be surrounded by people that basically love you and how do you say, like, believe in you also.
Support you and understand your craziness.
That's right, because there's always lots of people, especially when you have kids, that try to hold you back and tell you it's not possible, you can't do this anymore, you should have done this when you had no kids. And I think then it's important that you sort of listen, follow your own heart.
The people who tell you that are the people who would never do such a thing.
That's right. And I think
it's those people's limiting beliefs, not yours.
Exactly. And I think it's important, like if someone tells you not to do it, someone that has already done stuff like that, then it's different. But if just someone tells you, just your neighbor or your family members or friends that basically never go and do things like that anyways, and they tell you it's not possible, then you should
not listen. And in my case, like I have always felt that like when somebody tells me that you can't do it, that gave me even more fuel to want to do it because, like, to show them.
Yeah.
So you came back after Canada, you came back to Switzerland, right?
Yeah.
And then your second daughter was born in Switzerland.
She was born in Canada. She was born in Australia, our second daughter.
How come? I missed some part there now.
I'm totally wrong. You're right. I got it mixed. I should know better, actually.
Well, that's okay. With all the traveling that
you're right. Our second daughter, just thought, because now they got an Australian passport, the younger one got a Canadian passport, of course, because she was born in Canada. Yeah, we came back after that half-year's trip, and finally just realized that also the connections we made in Canada, and Sabrina, like I told you earlier, she said, I don't want to live my whole life in Davos, basically. And so suddenly we thought we have the opportunity to go and live in Canada. So we got so hooked up and had a job, sort of basically started off with trekking trips, horseback trips, also with the man that gave us the horses for our trip. So we just decided from basically half a year after we came home to leave Switzerland for good. Like we basically we moved to Canada. Mm-hmm. And not saying that we will be in Canada for all our life, but it just felt like the right thing to do then, and just go do it, see what happens. And as always, I think we're privileged here in Switzerland, of course, knowing we can always come back. We can always find work again if things don't work out. So we moved to Canada for 2 years and went back to the cabin again the next summer. Basically did the same trip to the cabin and then decided that we want to spend the whole winter there. Yeah, we just fell in love with the place and we thought this is it was our next dream, just spend a whole winter out nowhere, which is, just to give you an idea, it's like 200 Ks around you is just nothing. Just no town, no other people, just wilderness. And so you almost, like when you're there, it almost feels like, but Alcatraz, you're there, but there's no way you can escape anymore in winter.
But did you have how do you call, you obviously couldn't use a cell phone, or did you have any contact or any way to contact anybody?
No, we had a satellite phone. We did carry a satellite phone. We had a spot messenger, which is like a safety, like a signal that you can push buttons if, you have like a contract with a search and rescue company. The reason why we had a satellite phone was because when we spent the winter in the cabin, Sabrina was pregnant again. So we thought, just prepare, if worst comes to worst. But the nice thing was, and that was always a big matter too, that especially the world we live in now, where you have cell phones, where you have internet, you have everything. It's just so special that you can escape once in a while and just be offline for a few months. Yeah. Like no one can reach, like we could call someone, but no one.
If necessary, you could call someone. Yeah.
I just enjoy just nature and completely like quiet, no electricity, no nothing basically.
And did she give birth alone?
No, she Naira, the younger one, she was born in Prince George in a hospital. We decided to move out of the cabin. She was already 9 months pregnant, just short before labor. So we decided now we'll play this safe and go out.
Yeah. Amazing. Right. So you were doing these tours. People were coming from abroad and you were taking them around on these what do you call them? Like trekking trips, right?
Yeah, trekking trips. We actually established a sort of a route to the cabin. Yeah. Like a shorter version. And for quite a few years, we took clients together with our Canadian friend to show them the place. Yeah.
And then you went back to Switzerland?
And we went back to Switzerland. And one reason was that I suddenly had the opportunity to go and have speeches about our adventure trips all around Switzerland, later on in Austria and Germany. And like in Canada, we only, like the job to be able to do those horse treks, that was only limited to a few months. Mm-hmm. And so we needed, we would have needed a job.
You needed income.
income.
Yeah.
And so we decided, well, having this same things in life happen for a reason, I think. So I thought, well, take that opportunity and do those speeches. And so we came back, and soon after, it also turned out that Naira was allergic to horses. So it just
that was changed the end of the horse stories
again. Yeah, so that basically stopped us then after some years we're not able to travel with horses anymore.
And then came Australia.
Yeah, and that was another good example, I think, for things happen in life, and the for Naira being allergic to horses, it just completely changed our life again. Of course, what happened was we were back in Switzerland, and we thought we wanted to do, that was before we knew that she was allergic. We thought we'll go to Patagonia and travel with horses there. Yeah. And we thought everything will be so much easier now because we got the experience with horses, which was a big thing, of course. And also, we already had horses waiting in Patagonia for us. So we thought, well, this time it's just easy. We fly to Patagonia. We're very well prepared. We'll take the horses, saddle them up, and off we go. Just 2 months before we planned on hopping on the plane, we came close to horses here in Davos. Like, we decided that it would be good for Naira to hop on a horse, and for Amira, and her eyes just swell up, and we thought, oh no, my gosh.
That's it.
So that plan was killed. And for a moment, like, I was of course, like, really sort of disappointed, because suddenly I thought, well, what can we do now? And at that point too, I was just involved in all different sort of type of jobs. Like, I was on a building site, on just breaking down walls and dust all day. And I just took that job to make that trip possible. You know, a job that I can finish, that I can walk off, and basically just saving money. And then suddenly, when you don't have that dream in front of you anymore, you really hate going to work, because you don't see, you don't
what
have
for? Yeah.
We thought, well, was that it now with this kind of adventure travels? Now we have 2 girls, and we can't really walk with them and have them carry their backpacks and lots of food. And it was not our thing to rent a motorhome or, travel around, which can be very nice too, but it was just not what we
wanted. Your thing.
So suddenly we thought, well, is there other animals, that maybe we could go with, llama or camel, reindeer. Here in Davos, we have an allergy center. And I rang them up and I said, well, can we come along with our daughter? We would like to have her tested on camel, on llama, and on the reindeer.
I wonder what they thought.
Oh, yeah, no, the lady first, she laughed and she said, well, that's funny. No one so far asked us about
not surprised.
those, and they wouldn't have those tests. Like, we would have to bring camel wool, or better even go to a zoo or get in contact with a camel. So we thought, well, camel, that's because it's a big animal and it's just special. We thought that'll be fascinating. So I found out there's camel farms in Switzerland too. So we went to a camel farm, and more than once, and it turned out that she's not allergic to camels. Okay. So, and then we first thought about, well, with camels we could go to Mongolia or somewhere, or even Australia, and it all came together that because our kids have Australian passports, and also Sabrina's sister lives in Australia. She was getting married, and we thought, well, it all fits together. We go to Australia.
Fantastic. And I also read somewhere that your girls actually went to school in Australia for a while.
Also, that made it, of course, a lot easier to take them out of school here, because we could show them, well, they go to school in Australia. So that was no problem. And also, interesting enough was, like, first, of course, we had the idea that we can just buy camels or rent camels trained, and saddle them up, and off we go. It turned out that all the good camels those companies, they needed, or the farmers, they needed them for, like, they couldn't rent them out because they needed them for their tourist business, for camel rides and so on. So we got in contact with a camel farm, and they said, well, but what you could do is, like, you guys could buy wild camels that otherwise would go to the slaughterhouse or, export. And they're not expensive. They cost like $200. But what you have to do, of course, is train them.
Great.
And so what happened was we trained wild camels for half a year. And during that time, our girls went to school in Australia while Sabrina and I was training the camels. And after that half a year, finally, we got them tame enough to being able to hook them on a wagon. And we built a wagon for the trip too. And
How far did you go? Where did your kids go to school? Was that somewhere in the Red Centre? Where was it?
No, it was about 400 k's north of Adelaide. Is a town called Hawker. Hawker is the southern end of the Flinders Ranges.
Yes, I used to do Australia round trips for Kwoni.
Oh, wow.
I did a trip during the strike in 1989. All the inner Australian airlines were on strike, and we had to take the GAN, the train from Alice Springs to Adelaide.
Wow.
It's 25 hours of nothing, basically.
From, where did you say, to Adelaide?
Alice Springs to Adelaide.
Alice Springs to Adelaide,
Yes. So we probably went past somewhere where you were.
Yeah. And that explains why Australia also got camels. They imported them to build the GAN railway.
That's right. Yes. That must have been quite an adventure first to tame and train those camels. Were they good afterwards? Could you rely on them, or did they have their moments still?
While we were training them, they had lots of moments. But actually, as soon as I heard, well, you got to train them first, I thought, well, this becomes even better, more interesting, like you really get to know the camels, and also it makes it more difficult. Also, very exciting because our dream become possible, just because we went through so many up and downs. Like, first of all, we thought we're going to pack them. We train them so we can pack them and travel in a string. But then after a while, it turned out that not all camels were very good. Like some become quite tame, some not. They stayed sort of wild, very dangerous. So, and we knew, well, we got 2 kids. We got to be safe. We all got to be safe. Mm-hmm. And then, you're in the heat. If a girl needs to go for a pee, you got to have the whole pack string sit down. And then as soon as you get back on, the other one will be hungry and so on and so on. So what happened was we suddenly realized that, from books and from the history of how they used the camels, we found out that they used to hook them up on, have them pulling wagons. So we thought, well, a wagon would be perfect because for a wagon, we only need 2 camels. We have like a camper. We can sleep on it. We don't need to pack the camels every day and unload them and put up a tent every night. And especially when you travel for 3 months, it's a lot of work doing all that every day. So we were very sufficient. Like, we find a camp spot, unhook the camels, free them so they could feed. And our wagon was, put down the sides and had water on it and food and
How amazing. I mean, was there any moment in Australia when you felt, this is not, did you have a scary moment, any scary moments there?
We did have, once we started the trip, we actually ended up in the most difficult terrain at the beginning through the Flinders Ranges, and the camels they were quite good, but they're still in the process of learning, becoming better. So same with us. And so sometimes we get up steeper, there's quite some hills, like they have them in Australia too, almost mountains in the Flinders Ranges. And sometimes the camels would sit down. They wouldn't we would unpack the wagon, make it lighter, get up the hill, load it all again. And it turned out it's not because the camels were too weak, but they had their own mind, or one was quitting, sitting down suddenly. The other one was trying to pull still and just not in a good rhythm together. But then after a while, it was already after 2 or 3 weeks, we had a very basically tragic moment that we had to shoot one of our camels. It broke a leg, and that was pretty hard for us, and also something quite special for the kids
for
too.
the girls, I can imagine.
Girls, but what happened was first we took off with 4 camels because we had those 4 camels, we all thought they were quite good, and we thought, well, we could swap them. 2 could pull, 2 could walk behind. They were tied on a string, but a thin rope that they could break free if they needed. So what happened was we went over a sort of a hill down the other side. It was not steep, but the camels that pulled the wagon, they sort of started trotting, and suddenly the ones behind, one pulled back, ran off to the side. The other one, broke loose too. But then she was sitting down on the road, and I thought, oh, something must have happened. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a scary situation, but the camel, it was just sitting on the road, not getting up. And I thought, that's strange. Mm-hmm. So we walked up to it, and then we could see it broke a leg, and there was just nothing we could do anymore. Yeah. We were there for maybe an hour and trying, but then just realizing.
Yeah, well, I guess there's always 2 sides to everything, isn't there? And that's probably a moment, but it's an interesting moment also to understand nature and how things sometimes happen.
Yeah, also for the girls. I mean, it's not a nice moment, of course. It's difficult, but also I think they already saw when we were in Canada, like when we caught rabbits, we ate rabbits, we ate birds, we ate fish, and they were always very, very interested of seeing how we gut them, how we skin them, it just felt like death. Or for kids, it's actually not something you should not get them in contact with. I think they get a really natural sort of feeling for it, and it seems like it's very natural for them. And they appreciate, they know when they eat something, if they want to eat meat. Same for us, you really realize that this was an animal that someone needed to kill it. There's blood and all that, what we often don't want to see anymore. But it helps understanding.
Totally right. So now, because time is passing, and this is so fascinating. You obviously went back to Switzerland after that, and then COVID happened. But COVID didn't stop you from going somewhere. You went to Kyrgyzstan, right?
Yeah, that's right. The COVID stopped us in a way too. But yeah, we just actually it all started before COVID. That we thought, well, we had this dream of going to Mongolia. The teacher already asked us, because he knew, like this whole school knows that we probably sooner or later wanted to go again. So he said, well, what's the plan? And we said, well, we're planning on going to Mongolia. And then COVID came, and everything stopped for us as well. Back then we thought, well, after a few months, whatever, like Mongolia is still a year ahead of us. So by then, the borders will be open, will be off. So, but nothing changed, of course. And then suddenly, by doing research, finding out what places or countries are open, we found that Kyrgyzstan has open borders, so no problem to go there. And I totally understand that point of view as well, that, when you're in a pandemic, or you don't need to go traveling really. You could say, well, we do it later. But sometimes it's also no good. A lot of people say we do it later and you never do it. So no, but maybe if Amira wouldn't have been in 6th grade, just before high school, Oberstufe high school, we probably would have postponed or waited. But it was sort of, we suddenly felt, well, this is could be the last chance to go somewhere as a family because, time flies. She gets older, which is, she will do her own things. And so we thought, last chance, we got to go. So
you did. And you had a good time in Kyrgyzstan.
And we had a very good time in Kyrgyzstan. Also, traveling with horses. Funny enough, after a few years, Naira was not allergic to them.
I think you can outgrow allergies.
Yeah, we never pushed anything and just did homeopathics and yeah.
Yeah. Listening to you and listening to your stories, I believe that Naira and Amira are very, very lucky girls. And they have seen more or experienced more in their short lives than most people in 2-3 lives. And that's absolutely amazing. There's a book which talks about what people regret on their deathbed. And people don't regret things that they did. People regret things that they didn't do.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to do. And I think it's very important to live our dreams. So, Markus, we're coming to the end of this interview, but I want to know what is left. What's the next dream? What's the dream?
I don't know. It's like you said, like you shouldn't always look back in your life, but I'm totally like, we're very happy parents, very happy that we did what we did, because realizing now the kids are, they're becoming older and we can't, like often people might say, well, we do it later in life, but that option we don't get anymore. Our kids will be older one day, so we can't do it. And we'll do other things. Suddenly, like I said, they will be on their own somewhere. I still have my own dreams also. Rest of the family doesn't really want to go into the very, very cold sort of Arctic type.
You may have to go on your own then.
And I think that's something I will love doing one day to,
Really? So that will be we'll do another interview after that. That will be another story to tell.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Tell me,
but there might be more. Definitely, and I hope so. We'll do more family trips too.
Yeah. So you do presentations, don't you? People can book you to talk about what you did, or how can people find you?
Yeah, that's right. Easiest is on our website. It's called Blum und Weg.
I'll put it in the show notes. All be.
And I love, it's different. Some speeches are just basically about the story, and some, there's businesses that want to have certain, about certain themes, and it became a job. So
that's a wonderful job.
That's right, living the adventure and talking about it.
But you see, nobody gave it to you. You had to do the experience. Nothing comes for free. You had to do all this stuff, but now you can talk about it, and making it a job is a dream come true.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I think we're leaving it at that. Thank you so very much for spending time with me. And I wish I could be where you are in Davos and go and skiing, but I'm sitting here on my island in the sun, but that's okay. Thank you, Markus, for being my guest.
Well, it's been a big pleasure. Thank you, Elizabeth.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes. If you like what you hear and want to know more, check out my Soul Guru lifestyle program on my website, www.thesoulguru.com. Forget this.